was around 16 or 17, I went ghost hunting, taking pictures in the cemetery, just trying to get a thrill, I suppose, with 3 of my friends. We went to a small cemetery that was on a back road in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods. We arrived close to 3 a.m., so we weren't really surprised that there were no cars and nobody there. We were there for about 15 minutes when my friend D told us he was going to go back behind this hedge of bushes to pee. He comes back a few seconds later and tells us there was a guy back there, crouched over somebody. He said, "Oh, sorry about that, bud," because he assumed he came upon people about to have sex. The guy just stared at him and started to stand up, while the person on the ground didn't move at all. Needless to say, we all ran to the car to get the heck out of there. As we were driving away, my friend and I in the back seat looked out of the back glass and see the guy standing there in the opening to behind the bushes. We went to Walmart and bought a baseball bat and went back, like stupid teenagers. Thankfully, nobody was there. I've been living on my own with my boyfriend for almost 2 years now. I recently had a break-in while I was home about a week ago. It was early in the morning, about 3 a.m., nighttime for most of you. My boyfriend works the night shift, so he wasn't home at the time this happened. I was on my phone when I thought I heard someone coming up the outside stairs. There was a snowstorm that night, and really windy, so I didn't think much of what I heard outside. I was just about to close my eyes and go to sleep when I heard my front door being opened. It was left unlocked. I thought it was my boyfriend, so I was going to call out his name, and I did, to realize that was a big mistake. Now my house is a 1-bedroom apartment, so there isn't really anywhere to hide at all, especially when I was stuck in my room. Now my room door doesn't open or have a doorknob on it because it broke, so it's kind of tricky for someone to get it. The only place I had to hide was on my bed behind a wall that was still very visible. I grabbed a woods knife my boyfriend has on his dresser and hid. I could hear someone was trying to get in my room. It was one of the most intense things that ever happened in my life. I held my breath and was ready to start screaming and kicking and scaring whoever it was with a knife as much as I could, and I knew my downstairs neighbors would hear me, and they would come upstairs or call the police. The door swung open and I saw a tall man with a mask over his head and a black hoodie. He saw me and was headed for me, but I screamed and tried to kick him in his knees. I ended up kicking him in the nuts and he fell down immediately. He stood back up and I ran for the front door. As soon as I saw the front door, it opened and it was my boyfriend getting dropped off from his friend from work. I pushed him out of the house immediately and told him what was going on. He told me to run downstairs to his buddy's car and tell him what was going on and to stay with him in the car, safe. He took the knife from me and stayed in the front room. I ran outside and told him everything. He stayed in the parking lot and called the police. But then we heard a gunshot. Thank God my boyfriend didn't get shot, but the bullets went into the door and nearly hit my boyfriend in his leg. If it wasn't for my boyfriend and his friend to come home early that night, I think I would have been dead. We lived in a house with no fence. I had my dog on a chain during the day, and at night he came inside the house. One day we fell asleep early and forgot to bring him in. It was a summer night and he didn't seem to mind. He didn't bark to come in. At 1 a.m. he began barking. I woke up and felt terrible that I forgot him and rushed to go get him. But there's a man with a stick in my yard advancing on my dog. My dog was a pit bull / bull mastiff cross, a big dog. I was a 38-year-old mother of 3. My husband was still asleep. I stayed on my porch and yelled around the side of my house, "Stop! What do you think you're doing? Get off my property." The man was still advancing on my dog with the stick. He barked at me. "I'm gonna teach him you don't bark at me." Confused, I said, "What? That's his job. You're on my property. He is supposed to bark at you." The man swung around and yelled at me, brandishing his stick. "I was just walking by. You do not bark at me." He turned towards my dog again. I opened my front door and yelled for my husband to bring me my gun. Then I full-heartedly jumped off the side of the porch and got between the drunk guy and my dog. "Get away from my dog," I yelled very pointedly. At this moment, my husband arrived with my grandfather's old .22 rifle. He threatened to shoot him and told him to get off our property. The man yells, "I don't care, shoot me." Well, since he called my husband's bluff, we had no bullets at the time, my husband raised the gun to crack the drunk dude over the head. Well, I didn't want my grandfather's gun broken, so I stopped him and told him to get my phone and call 911. Meanwhile, the drunk guy begins advancing on me and my dog again. I'm trying to protect my dog. My dog is meantime trying to protect me. So we keep getting in front of each other while this guy is attempting to hit us with a stick. I think that my dog and I switching places so often had him confused, as he was really drunk, so he never landed a hard hit on either of us. My husband with 911 on the phone realized that now the guy was trying to hit me as well. He grabbed my cheap Dollar General mop off the porch where it was drying, chucked the phone to me, which I amazingly caught, and proceeded to whack the drunk guy with it, backing him out of our yard once drunk guy was in the street. My husband just paced back and forth by our mailbox, daring him to come back because he would knock his ass out with the mop. Of course, dumb drunk guy decides to accept this challenge and rushed at my husband, who promptly whacked him over the head and broke my poor, cheaply aluminum-handled mop into 2 pieces, of which they both brandish as part of like a drunken sword fighters. My husband in boxer shorts defending our property with half a mop. I yell out that the cops are on the way. We only lived 3 blocks from the police station. Drunk guy runs into the alley across from our house. The cops arrive. They must have been bored. 4 cars. Yes, 4 for a drunk guy with a stick. And the one who pulled up to talk to me there was a canine unit. The policeman listened to my story, then grinned evilly. "Well, I'm gonna teach him not to pick on dogs." "Which way did he go?" I pointed to the alley. He radioed the other cars which circled the block. Then he got his dog out, took him to the alley and said search, releasing the dog. The snarls and growls and barks followed by one long scream, then the sound of 6 officers snagging the guy and dragging him from the alley will forever warm my evil heart. The officer returned to let me know they had caught the offender and my dog was safe. I told him thanks, but my dog would be inside from now on. I never let him outside there again. So I was probably 12 or 13 when this happened. I'm a pretty sheltered kid, so at the time I didn't think much of it. But in retrospect, it was definitely weird. I was at the shop with my mom, and at the time I was going through a weird teenage phase where I didn't really want to be seen anywhere with anyone but my friends. Mom was inside the supermarket, and I just stayed in the car to read. I started getting that weird, crawling feeling you get when someone's looking at you. I still remember looking up and around, and there was a guy with a camera pointed right at my side of the car. Now, to clarify, I wasn't totally unaware that predators exist, but I was naive and thought maybe he was just taking photos of the shop for some reason. Regardless, I still remember his face, and it creeps me out. He was your quintessential predator type, half-grown beard and missing half his teeth, mouth that doesn't shut properly, one eye half shut and the other fully open. He gave me the creepiest smile I had ever seen, and went back to his van. I don't even want to think of why before driving off. I never mentioned it to my mom or to anyone else, really. At the time, I'd justified it to myself, even if he gave me the creeps. But I'm in my 20s now, and needless to say, if some 12-year-old kid told me that a man had a camera pointed in her direction, I'd think it was creepy. Weird that I never thought about it before now. I'm a mortar infantryman for the Army. We're trained to deal with deadly situations and be prepared to fight to the death if needed. My experience happened approximately 4 years ago, but he hasn't left me alone since. One day during January that year, my parents had me walk the family dog and my dog, so I decided to bring them to the golf course that was shut down for the season. Now across the golf course, there's a small forest area that I usually walk them in, because it's the closest I get to forests since I live in the city. Now I live about 20 minutes from Minneapolis, in Minnesota. It's very industrialized here, and it's one place you wouldn't expect to run into something like this. Back to the story. I went in through the opening and went down the trail. That place always felt it was pretty off for some reason. I don't know, call it a sense that something is wrong with that place, and the fact that there's no sound in the woods. I ignored it and went on with their walk, and suddenly I felt like I was being watched. I couldn't tell anything with all the snow and trees, and the fact that there's no snow that fell from them either. So like a dumbass, I ignored it and went on. I went out the other side of the forest and headed up a hill that leads to a road that leads to the end of the golf course. I felt the feeling of being watched again and turned around on instinct and saw it. It was a pale white figure standing in the tree. I'm a person who always believed in the supernatural and enjoyed studying it, and I knew what that thing was. It was a Wendigo, and I knew I needed to get out of there. For those who don't know, a Wendigo is a mythical creature that is believed in Native American folklore. It's believed that it's a carnivorous monster that never stops eating. Back to the story. I ran as fast as I could with the dogs across the street, and it started to chase me. I almost got hit by an oncoming van, and it stopped and looked at what I was running from, and immediately got back in his van and drove off faster than he did before. While he was distracted, I ran as fast as I could, and I ran back to my home. Once I got home, I acted as natural as I could and went to my room and tried my best to calm down. By dinner, I had calmed down and ate dinner. Once it came to going to bed, it was when it started to get creepy. To explain the layout of where I am in the house, my room is right below the roof and has another small roof that is above the front porch, which is right outside my window. I shut my blinds and got ready for bed. Then I heard footsteps on my roof, followed by a small thump right outside my window. I saw the silhouette of it. That fucker was hunched over looking in my window as if he could see me. I was terrified by this and couldn't sleep at all. I couldn't even breathe. It stood there for what seemed like an eternity, which was only about 2 hours. After that time had passed, he gave up after letting out a scream. It was like a mix of an alien scream and a cat getting skinned alive. My parents wondered what was going on, and I made up some excuse. They believed me and headed back to bed. There is no need to get them into this, and it's not like they'll believe me anyway. I didn't take a picture or video. That wasn't the end of it. This happened every day of every week for about 2 months, then turned to every other day, to every week, to every month. Nowadays, I don't see it as much, but I see him now and then. I still go to that area even to this day, and even found a skinwalker there, and that's a story for another day. If you ever run into a Wendigo, Run. Run as fast as you can and as far away as you can. I don't care if you have to run to a new city. I don't care if you have to leave the state. Just run so far away that you lose that. Or the same events that happened to me may happen to you. If you have any information about how to kill this, leave it in the comments. I've already tried holy water and that didn't work. Put it all over the roof outside my window, and he was standing on it like it was nothing. Be careful. Sometimes while searching for monsters, they'll end up finding you.